Welcome back to Drive Your Thoughts podcast. I'm your host, Master Coach Carrie Marshall, and it's time to go after those goals.
Yeah, whether ready or not, life's coming hard, no breaks, no stop. And if you put me on the spot, don't get it twisted, I never drop. If you feel a bit out of control and out the box, here's a way that you could drive your thoughts. Turn this podcast on, it's a lock. Carrie Marshall on the clock.
Welcome back to Drive Your Thoughts Coaching. I'm Carrie Marshall, and today I want to talk to you about big failures. Big failures are absolutely going to be part of the process as you go after your goals. So often when people come to me and they're getting frustrated because they haven't accomplished a big goal, I like to ask them, how many big failures have you had in the past quarter or year? If they can't answer me that, then I know that what's happening is we're not taking enough action and creating really big failures in our life to accomplish what we really want to. Now, I don't just talk about this. This is something that I incorporate in my own life. And I want to share with you a couple of big failures that have happened for me as I've grown my business, because I think it's important to not just talk about skill sets, but to also incorporate story as well. So, as all of you know, one of the things that I'm very proud of is that I'm a master certified coach. So what does that mean for anybody that is not in the realm of coaching? Well, one thing that you need to know is that the coaching world is an unregulated industry, meaning that anybody can go out right now today and say that they are a coach. But for me, it really mattered to me that I was getting trained to be the best coach that I could be. I really wanted to learn the skill set of not just asking questions, but being able to do things like hold space, be non-judgmental of my clients, and really learn more about emotions and things like that. And so I went to the Life Coach School with Brooke Castillo to get certified as a coach. At the time, Brooke was doing an in-person event, and so I went to Texas to get certified with a small, intimate group. We kind of meet in these bigger groups, and then we'd branch off and just meet in this small group with 10 people. And so that's how I got certified to be a coach. Well, at the time, Brooke was also doing something called Master Coach Certification. And so what that was you could actually apply to be a master coach, which meant that you would invest more money and that you would be able to really dive into your skills as a coach. As soon as I decided to be a coach, I knew I wanted to be a master coach. Anytime I do any training, I always want to do the best training that I can, and that included master coach training. So I went and I was certified as a coach. I loved the process, and then I went out and started working as a coach. I spent a lot of time being a contract coach, meaning that I worked for other people, because what I really wanted is I wanted to be able to coach a lot of people, and I wanted to be able to coach anybody on anything. And so as I was simultaneously building my business, coaching men, I was also being a contract coach for several different companies, including the Life Coach School. And so I was able to coach thousands of people. Now, somebody's out there saying, really, Carrie, thousands? And what I want to tell you is, yes, thousands. One particular month, I coached over 500 people by doing back coaching sessions, 20-minute sessions. And so I really wanted to push the boundaries of what I thought was possible, being able to talk to people about these issues and problems. And so I really wanted to push that skill that I had of, number one, coaching back to back, but also number two, coaching on every single topic. And so I was willing to and able to coach a ton of people. It was almost like I was coaching every single hour, but that was an impossible goal that I had, and I was able to reach it. So this all culminates to me wanting to be a master coach, because I wanted to gain the skill set that I needed in order to apply to be a master coach. And so at the time, several of my coaching friends were also going to apply to be master coaches. We decided to do it all at the same time. And so the process to become a master coach was you had to send in an application that was written, you had to do some written coaching. You had to send in a video of you actually coaching. You had to send in a video of you teaching concepts that the Life Coach School had. And so we all put in our applications, and I was really excited. Number one, the Master Coach training was in the Caymans. So we got to go to the Caymans for a week. So excited about that. Number two, we were going to be trained by master coaches that I loved and respected and really looked up to as mentors that I wanted to spend more time with. Number three, being with my friends. So all of this, I kept believing like, yeah, this is going to happen. Well, then the day came that we were getting our applications back, and my friends started to message in our group. I got it. I'm so excited. This is going to be fun. I'm terrified, but I'm so excited. And then I got my email back, and my email said, "Thank you for applying, but it's not for you right now." I was crushed. I had done so much action and belief work in order to get to the place that I was. I felt so embarrassed and a little bit ashamed that every one of my friends had gotten into the program and I hadn't. I spent some time thinking that maybe I didn't have what it took to be a coach in general. I thought that maybe there was something about me personally that people didn't like, that maybe I was a really good coach, but my personality was rubbing people the wrong way, and that if I had just been a little bit more serene, or if I had just been a little bit more authoritative instead of fun, that would have got me to the place. To this day, I still don't know why I wasn't chosen exactly at that time, but I just remember thinking that that was one of the biggest failures that I had had up to that point in my career. I felt like I had gone out on a limb and really told a lot of people, and I would kind of regretted that. I thought, oh my gosh, why did I tell so many people that I was going after Master Coach training? And I thought, this is just going to be so devastating. I allowed myself to be in that space for a little bit, and I saw that what I had done is I had gone after something that I wanted so desperately, but that I had had a big failure. But like I always say, failure is feedback. And so what I did is I went back through my own things, my coaching, my teaching, my written coaching, my application form. And I went through that because I couldn't ask for feedback from the school. And so I went back through it myself, and I decided to give myself feedback. And so the thing that I noticed was that I was lacking the leadership energy that I wanted to create in that space as I was talking about this. And so I went back and I thought to myself, I'm never going to not have leader energy the next time that I do this. So that was the first thought that I had. So let's talk and pause for a minute in this story. So what happens when big failures happen in our lives? Number one is you're going to feel terrible. Nobody has a big failure and thinks, oh, it's okay, I'm totally fine with this. That's not what happens. You're going to feel terrible. That's part of the process. But we want to make sure that you're, number one, processing the emotion, identifying what those feelings are, and then remembering that just because you're having an emotion doesn't mean that you're a certain type of person. I was feeling shame because I was telling myself that I wasn't good enough. That's not true. So I had to process the emotion, but also identify that it doesn't mean anything about me. The second thing that you want to do is make sure that you're using the failure for feedback. And so what is the feedback telling you? What are you getting back to yourself as you go after and see that the failure is happening? So what is the feedback? So like I just mentioned, I had to go and give myself feedback by actually sitting and watching my videos, and not from a place of judgment. So what's the difference between judgment and feedback after we have a very big failure? Well, you're going to notice that judgment is going to come up, and you're going to say things like, I can't believe I said that. That's so dumb. I shouldn't have said it that way. I said too many filler words like, I think one of my filler words is absolutely. So you can kind of watch that. So that's going to be different than feedback. Feedback is going to say, interesting. Maybe we could say less filler words. Notice the difference. Filler words both came up, but I'm not judging myself for doing it. I'm just giving myself feedback like I would to any of my friends or clients. So as you take the failure, you're going to use the feedback and not judge. So you're going to do that. And that's why big failures are going to matter, because big failures create big feedback. If I would have just told myself that I was, wanting to improve as a coach, the feedback would have been very minimal. I could have watched some coaching sessions and said, oh, I could do this or this different. But going after master coach training and getting accepted to that program gave me big feedback very quickly. So as you think about big failures, you should be setting yourself up for big failures several times a quarter. And we're going to get to that in a minute of how to actually set those up. But I want to come back to my story. So as I saw that I needed to come with more leader energy, at the exact time that I was in applying for Master Coach certification, I was actually an intern training to be an instructor for certification. So that very first process that I went through, I was training to be an instructor, like the instructor that I certified with. And so I got to be an intern in these classes. I would show up, I'd take notes. Occasionally the instructor would ask for some feedback or ask for me to teach a tool, but I would always wait for that instructor to tell me what to do. And so the next thing that came up for me as I was writing down this feedback was, I'm going to make it absolutely impossible to say no to me. I'm going to make it impossible to say no to me being a master coach. That thought came up and I didn't know how that was going to work, but it just felt so good in my body. It like zinged down, like it just grounded right down into every single fiber of my being that I could make that happen. Once again, I didn't know how, but I knew that that resonated with me. And so that's the thought that I decided to take with me, was that I was going to make it impossible to say no to me. Now, I didn't know, like I said, time of that, but I did know that I was in charge of that. That the next time somebody that was on the application committee saw me, they were going to say, yes, that's what we were missing from her. And so let's go back to that instructor and the certification class. I showed up on this call. All of the certification students were there. I was there. The instructor was missing. Unbeknownst to me, the instructor had a terrible, her Wi-Fi went down, electricity went down, phones went down. So there was no way that she could get into class. She didn't have access to phone, internet, anything. And so as the class started, about 1 minute in, we always were prompt about when we started. I thought to myself, leader energy, and I'm going to make it impossible to say no. I started the class. I took ownership that I was leading that class, regardless of whether the instructor showed up right then or if she never showed up at all. So I led the class for about 20 minutes, and then the instructor showed up. Her Wi-Fi came back on. She was so nervous that maybe some of the students had left, or she was worried that nobody would be there. She was worried that maybe we hadn't done anything. But what she came into was a class that was being led exactly like she would have led it. She saw a class that was being managed with questions, but also with coaching and feedback. And so when she came in, I said, we're so glad to have you. Here's where we're at. Here's what we're doing. And she said, go ahead and teach the rest of the class. I taught the rest of the class. I told her, thank you for the opportunity. I told her I would be willing to take feedback, and I would absolutely love to hear feedback if she had any. And she said, I'll get back to you on that. About an hour later, I got an email, and it said, we were so thrilled to see the leadership energy that you brought on this call that we just found out about. We've watched the video, and it delighted us to see what was missing from your application call, which was leader energy. We are delighted to welcome you to Master Coach Training. Watch what that failure and feedback did for me. I took the failure, I processed the emotion, but I didn't stay in that judgment, and I didn't stay in that space of just taking the feedback and then thinking, I'll deal with that next year when Master Coach applications come around again. So notice that when I talk about adjust, adapt, and implement quickly, that is what we're doing. Big failures lead to big feedback, and use that feedback quickly. As I utilized my own feedback and I saw that there was leadership energy missing, and I was guessing, by the way, I had to just utilize what I thought was missing. But for them, they knew exactly that that's what I needed. And so I was able to go to Master Coach training with my friends. I was able to see all of these amazing mentors. And really, that was one of the things that really was a catalyst for me having success as a master coach, but also in my business. Now, I could tell you so many different stories, but what I want to offer is that this was a really big impact for me because it felt like a really big failure at the time. I look back now and I think like we could have gone bigger. And that's what I love to do now is I really love to think about what's the next big failure that I want to take. And so let's talk about actually scheduling failure and why we would want to do that. So like I mentioned, I like to schedule a couple of big failures every single quarter. So why would we want to do that? Number one is we're not setting out to fail. What we're doing is we're setting out to succeed with kind of the knowledge in the back that we probably will fail. But what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to see that we're going to get a lot of feedback from that failure. So look at your quarter and ask yourself, number one, what's the goal? Number two, what would be a big failure in this arena? Maybe you have something like a podcast and you have some guests that you really want to get on. A big failure might not just being like, okay, maybe I'm going to, reach out, but maybe the big fail is going to be, I'm going to reach out and I'm going to make an offer and I'm going to set a date for it. I don't know what it's going to be for you, but I want you to just think about how are you going to go big, taking action towards something where you're going to see it as a big failure. The reason that we set up big failures is to get feedback. But here's the other thing that's kind of cool about this is you never know when your big failure is actually going to turn into a big success. So I talk to my clients about this a lot. One of my clients had this big failure that he was wanting to do. Talked about it all the time. Talked about how it was going to feel terrible, how he would feel afterwards, how he would process the emotion. And then he set out to make that big failure happen in the quarter. Well, as he started to take action, there were small failures, but the big failure never came because he kept adjusting and adapting around the failures. And so the big failure that he kept talking about actually turned out to be an accomplishment. And he was blown away. He said, I never thought that I would be able to accomplish this so quickly. And he said, I never would have accomplished this if I wouldn't have set out to fail. He wanted to fail so epically that he felt like he had to be embarrassed and that he would, take flack from his buddies and all of these things that he was like, I'm willing to do it because it's really going to teach me a lot and I can see who I am. I can see how I can use it as feedback. But then he actually accomplished it and he was like, whoa, that was really fun. So that's another reason that we set those big failures. So once again, as you go after these big failures, I want to just kind of remind you that you never know when a failure is going to lead to feedback that then leads you to accomplishing the goal. Failure feels terrible because of how we think about it. I just recently went through a smaller failure and I called my mom and I kind of said, Mom, I'm just feeling so bad. I can't believe I did this. This definitely feels like a failure. And she was quiet on the phone and she goes, well, you know what one of my best favorite kid says? And I said, oh, that's definitely me. What? And she goes, failure is just feedback. And, sometimes your own words coming back to you, sometimes they're hard to take, but I just kind of had to sit there, take a deep breath and say, failure is feedback. What is this failure teaching me? And so I want to offer that your failure does not define you. It does not mean that something's gone wrong. Your failure is feedback. And if you can take that failure and really remember to adjust and adapt and implement quickly, you are going to see that that failure is going to lead to a success that is going to lead to you showing up in a life that you love to live. Go and set those big failures. see them as opportunities to grow, and then see them as your biggest points of creating the most massive amounts of feedback that you can get. Go out and fail and tell me. Come over to Drive Your Thoughts Coaching on Instagram. Message me there. Tell me what your biggest failure is and how you're getting feedback from there. We'll see you next time on Drive Your Thoughts Coaching. Bye. Thanks for listening to this podcast episode. If you're ready to get in the driver's seat of your own life, you can come and follow me at Drive Your Thoughts Coaching on Instagram, or come and see more ways to work with me at driveyourthoughts.com.
Yeah, whether ready or not, life's coming hard, no breaks, no stop. And if you put me on the spot, don't get it twisted, I never drop. If you feel a bit out of control and out the box, here's a way that you could drive your thoughts. Turn this podcast on, it's a lock. Carrie Marshall on the clock.